This video is called Double Stack Day Gone Awry because, as you'll see, my perfectly good idea of running some double stack trains quickly turned into chaos and confusion when I got enough people involved in it. But it's a lot of fun, so I hope you'll enjoy it. This is Burr Stewart, your host, and this is the 41st video in my series of operations video. In this case, it's not so much operations as it is running a bunch of trains, and particularly odd ones, such as the ones that you're seeing here. Oops. In the end, we had so much fun we decided to run a 70-car train with mid-train helpers, but that's the subject for a future video. Bang. Today we're just going to concentrate on how a perfectly good idea, like running a container train or two, even though this HO scale railroad is supposed to be set in 1973, which is before double-stack container trains were even invented, turned into a pretty crazy train running session, if you ask me. For example, right here you can see a very strange looking British passenger rail train proceeding along the shores of Puget Sound while a double stack train enters the Skycomish staging yard. Robin brought these cars over because he doesn't have a layout yet and wanted to run them. Makes sense, except it has nothing to do with double stack trains. As you can see here, he had to stop because there was another container train right on the main line in front of him over the Salmon Bay Bridge that hadn't started moving yet, so he had to wait. No problem, except the train in front of him advanced in fits and starts, as you can see. He got impatient and blew his horn, which seemed to help things. You know how I feel about horn blowing. I'm for it. There's something that bothers me about a passenger train crawling along behind a freight train. Now, I could say that the freight train is a high priority double stack train and the railroad is more interested in that business than it is in the passenger business. Or I could say that this British Rails consist has no business whatsoever being on the Burlington Northern, which also has no business running BNSF trains. All of this is true, but I'm not sure how it helps. Fortunately, we're saved by the approach of another great-looking double-stack train coming across the Salmon Bay Bridge towards us, so we can enjoy that.
First time I'd ever seen that coming straight from manufacturer.
Nice.
I had to get them, and then there you go, repainted for BNSF numbers.
Are those ones you brought here about a month ago? Those separate ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
The crew in the background is discussing the fact that these green cars are the new ScaleTrains Trinity backpacker well cars. They were just released recently, so we're celebrating that by running all of these double stack trains.
Faded green, and they're also repainted for BNSF.
Somebody got a phone call. Yet another example of reality model railroading. Well, what you don't know can't hurt you may not be true in the case of watching a model railroad video like this. So in the inset, you can see a camera that we had simultaneously operating in one of the containers on one of the other trains on the railroad. And we were coming along the Skycomish yard and preparing to head up the cutoff towards the Bellingham staging.
I think so. Let me give her a call and I'll call you right back. Is that okay?
And you're about to see that train enter the screen. There we go. We're coming along at the top there, top level. The bottom train seems to have stalled. I'm not sure why. And now we're going to head across that bridge in the center of the main shot. With any luck. There it is. And for some reason our camera seems to be sideways and we're having a little trouble.
Yeah, you just split that switch in. I want to know as well. You just split that switch there.
I wonder what that was all about.
Yeah.
Must be a derailment. Bad enough to stop the train. Yeah, I didn't have the camera container on properly, but now it seems to be fixed. That's a cool shot going in through the bridge there. And now we're going around past the Bellingham staging tracks as we showed in the previous video. It seems to me that the camera angle is slightly off and tilted to the left. I think what happened is the little spy camera is in the hole sideways after I recovered from that derailment. At this point we can see the body of our upper level train moving across that nice bridge. And the head end is going across the Bellingham staging yard above the interbay yard, shown in the inset. As you can probably tell, I sped up this part of the video 2 times, just so we can get this over with a little more quickly. There we go. Now the next action occurs in the Delta yard, where we have the Legacy Santa Fe paint scheme train coming in on the siding, moving back toward the main because of a turnout control clearance problem that I have that I need to fix. Pay no attention to those British Rail passenger cars there on the main line that we're maneuvering around. This is such a long train, I'll speed up the video again for you. There's the end of it. We were so pleased with our success with these long trains, what we thought was long, that the following week we ran a 70-car train with 7 diesels on the front. But that's a subject for a different video. For now, we just have to keep track of all these trains we're running today. Look what just showed up here on the low line. I stopped it so you could see the camera that's shown in the inset. It's a small battery-powered spy cam, and I drilled a hole in the container so that the camera is looking forward towards the locomotive. And you can see from the inset that I got the camera tilted slightly so it's not exactly level. But anyway, that's what the setup looks like. I've got the video speeded up 4 times the actual recording, but it looks pretty close to scale speed if these trains were running at 60 miles an hour. So we'll just take a spin along the low line here, coming into Everett Junction, which if you watched part 40, you saw a complete tour of the layout and you know where this is. And now we're on the double track section of the main line, heading south towards Seattle, with some sort of a management discussion taking place. A few minutes later, our train has moved into the interbay yard, and you can see up on the Bellingham staging track, the other train is now moving southbound from Bellingham down towards Burlington. It's kind of a cool effect. I guess you could call it parallel flow. Off in the distance, we're going across the drop-down bridge that leads to Burlington from Bellingham. And I was thinking I was done with this sequence, but then when I got to the end of the train back in Interbay, I saw that British passenger train was all ready to go. So I guess we'll have to watch that for a minute. This is what I mean by container trains gone awry. There are just random other things happening that keep it interesting. Or even bizarre. Well, there goes Robin's passenger train. Well, our next event is a meet between 2 double-stack trains. The one we're riding on here is headed northbound from Interbay, and we're passing a southbound double-stack. It's kind of cool being in the valley here between the stack train and hillside. We're starting to discuss the feasibility of running a 70-car train, which would mean taking a bunch of these well cars and putting them all together, possibly with some helper units in mid-train. So you're going to see some of that action in a minute. But first we have to go to some other more bizarre moves. As you now know, here we are coming up the High Line towards the Delta Yard. On the prototype, we'd be diving into a tunnel for this move, but I didn't have room on the layout for a tunnel. So here we are moving into the yard. Wait a minute, was that a steam engine? What did I see there? Yeah, I slowed it down so you could hear the chuff. That's a steam engine, all right. That was a Challenger that Aidan brought over, and somebody claims that there was a steam engine pulling a double stack sometime recently in rail fanning history, so we'll take their word for it. Meanwhile, you can see the train got hung up on a ground throw, so it took us a while to fix that. I just grabbed the locomotive and shoved it forward. It seemed to do the job. Well, our next totally bizarre thing was that Aidan had brought a couple of SD 40-2s that were decorated in fancy Union Pacific livery. I'm really not sure what they're doing in Skycomish, but I guess we'll just have to use our imaginations and get ready for some even stranger things to come here shortly. I sped it up so we can get there shortly. Back in the far corner, the train is going around the Rainbow Bridge and turning back on itself. So we'll see the locomotives come out on the right side of the Skycomish yard there. While down in the lower level, our second double stack train has made its way around on the double track main. That's kind of a nice view, two trains in parallel, but Aidan's a little worried about whether these two SD 40-2s have enough pulling power to get the train up that grade, which it appears that they don't.
Nope, we just stalled.
You can go ahead and pull it with your fingers if you want.
A little aid from an 050 helper engine is all it needed. I don't remember exactly, but I think that grade is about 3%, just for the cutoff between Skycomish and Bellingham. So that's why we have troubles like this. So for the moment we're back to normal, but believe me, it's not going to last. Our friend Magnus, who is originally from Sweden, heard that we were running container trains, so he had to bring over his Fleischmann Swedish container train. You can see it here, heading southbound towards Seattle from Stockholm, without any overhead wire to power it. But it's kind of cool. I've never seen a Swedish container train before, have you? I mean, technically it's not a double stack train, which was the advertised purpose of this operating session. But what are you going to do? Actually, you'll notice here that he had a little trouble getting the engine over some of my code 70 switches because the Fleischmann equipment has deep flanges. No sooner had we gotten over that anomaly than the Jerry Grinstein Green locomotive showed up pulling a double stack train. Seen here passing through Argo Yard, northbound. Aren't you glad I keep you oriented geographically even when the subject is bizarre?
What would you expand to?
Now the Grinstein Special is heading up the High Line and through Delta Yard
that's the thing.
while another train is making its way along the low line.
He's got a bit turned yard. Oh,
Oops, we seem to have a derailment here. We'll pass on that, go to the next scene, where we seem to have a work stoppage. Which makes sense, because there's just too many weird things happening here. You have a British rail train going up towards Skykomish. You have a Swedish container train entering Skykomish, and a third train resuming its trip towards Seattle. I don't know, it's getting too confusing for me. Whose idea was this anyway? Well, it seems like a relatively pastoral scene. We look at it from the camera car. But you won't believe what's about to happen. I sped up the video 4 times so you wouldn't have to wait to see what happens. Ouch!
Whoever's running BNSF 5869, you need to stop. Okay, string line over here.
You can also just set the CD to.
Well, we got it started again, but I was really nervous about being so close to that other opposing train, so I pulled the container off and set it down on the layout. So now we get a stationary view of that train going by. I don't think we did figure out what caused that string line accident. For our next excitement, we pull across the Skulls Bridge, as we call it, and we have to stop because in front of us is another container train, plus a British DMU that Robin seems to have run around the layout with. You can see it there in the far distance. A few minutes later, we're down in Argo Yard, passing the British passenger train. And then, passing a double stack train. Cool. When will the fun ever end? Well, you knew what was going to happen. We had so much fun with these double stack trains that were only 15 to 20 cars long, pulled by only 2 locomotives. And we thought, well, wait a minute, what if we made a 70-car train pulled by 7 locomotives, with 3 of them as mid-train helpers? Well, what happened next will be the subject of a future video, but I thought I'd show you at least that we were horsing around with the locomotive consists and trying to at least get ready for running that long train. This involved setting up 2 advanced consists, one with 4 locomotives and one with 3, and testing out their relative speeds, trying to get them speed matched, and getting them in front of various container cars. I have to teach myself not to lean on the layout like that. Very bad. And with that, we bring yet another model railroad video to a close. This is Burr Stewart. Bang! Hoping you've enjoyed this and wishing you much fun with trains.